the Extremist movie debate. And tonight, we're talking 2016's Hell or High Water.
I'm Joe.
I'm Ethan, and one of us is going to love it, one of us is going to hate it.
Let the coin decide their fate.
I love it.
I hate it. And hey guys, don't send a Texas Ranger after us to sniper one of us in the heads at the very end as we're machine gun firing down in a whole barrage of people. Spoilers ahead.
Let's do the whole movie next time.
Okay, Joe, this one is for you since you hate this movie.
Dude.
Oh, I'm sorry. This movie is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes with a
Yes.
98%. And so, since Joe hates this movie, the first question is for you. This comes from Peter Rainier of the Christian Science Monitor. He says, Taylor Sheridan's screenplay sounds like people speak, not screenwriters speak, and yet it's stylized enough to catch the ear. The lines are memorable without being show-offy. So, did the script actually work for the audience, or do you think it talked down to the audience a little bit?
See, I don't think...
Oh, you have 1 minute.
Thank you. I don't think the movie necessarily talked down to the audience. I don't think the movie was talking to anybody because this movie and its dialogue is so convoluted and nothing means anything. They're just fucking talking and talking and talking. They keep talking and nothing actually happens except for them driving around in cars talking, and occasionally they'll rob a bank and then they'll run out, jump in a car and just start talking, and none of the talk adds up to anything. So it's not actually progressing the plot forward at all. It's not actually progressing any characters forward at all. You're just hearing them yammer on about growing up on a farm, and I don't care. Like, I can see what you guys are wearing. I can see that you're in Texas. Sure, you probably grew up on a farm. That's fine. I don't need to hear you guys talking about the old farm and all the cows and the sheep on your old farm. I don't need to hear any of that. It was more cumbersome and more distracting than anything.
Okay, Ethan, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I really have a hard time trying to think of a wasted line of dialogue in this movie. Like the first half
I can
hour.
think of a lot.
Well, I would like to hear it, because in the first half hour, I feel like you established that they're brothers, that their mom just died, that he was recently back from prison for a year and wasn't there to help, that his father is dead, but who killed him? Oh, we find out later it's Ben Foster. That there was this plan that Chris Pine put in place in order to rob banks, but we don't know why. Ben Foster is in on it reluctantly. Chris Pine is doing it reluctantly. Why are they trying to get there? Because they're just peppering in these little bits of dialogue to help us along that way.
That's your time. Joe, you have 15 seconds to respond.
Yeah, but some of that stuff, like, there's no exposition in the dialogue. That's what I'm saying. Like, you find out the mom's dead because they walk into their mom's room and you see a hospital bed and they just go, well, it's been a couple months. And then they just move on. They go and sit in a car and they talk about bullshit for 20 minutes. And that's what I'm saying.
Okay,
Like,
Joe, that's your 15. Ethan, you have a final 15 to respond.
Good. So they established most of this movie through visuals, and then they just let us relate to their actual relationship as brother and brother through them kind of fucking around in a car a little bit, which I think is still very, very minimal in this movie.
Okay, thank you. And Ethan, this next question is for you, and this is actually about the dialogue as well. This comes from Tony Medley of TonyMedley.com. He says this movie is not for children, and also, while there's some good action while the brothers are holding up the banks, this film is mostly conversation between Tanner and Toby on one hand, and Alberto and Marcus on the other. So why did the heavy dialogue work for the story instead of focusing purely on the bank robbing action? You have 1 minute.
Because if you want to make a movie that's halfway realistic about brothers in an awful circumstance trying to rob a bank, yeah, most of life doesn't actually have violence wall to wall. It's actually a whole lot of talk, and it's a whole lot of conflict in the conversation between the two. This movie has very, very small bits of violence, which, by the way, Tony Medley, this movie's rated R. No shit, it's not for kids. Sorry.
Okay, Joe, you have 30 seconds to respond.
so Ethan's talking about this, like, great familial relationship these two brothers have, but in fact, they don't like each other. Ben Foster has been in prison for 10 years, and Chris Pine holds that against him and does not like him. He only goes to his brother because he's in a tight, desperate spot. So to say that all the dialogue leads up to this loving brother relationship is frankly bullshit because it doesn't exist. They're just sitting in the car bullshitting around because they have nothing better to do because they fucking hate each other.
Okay, Ethan, you have 15 seconds to respond.
I never once said loving brother relationship. I believe I was talking about the brotherly relationship where, yeah, they fight constantly. There's actually a scene where they're just fighting in a field. granted, they're both smiling, but that's what brothers do. And yeah, they don't like each other, but you find out that they're still doing this for each other, that they're still willing to risk their lives for each other.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. Joe, you have a final 15 seconds to respond.
I'm so sorry that the natural inclination when you say brotherly is to think of loving. I didn't know that you had a completely separate definition for brotherly than the entire world. My mistake.
Okay, well, thank you.
Philadelphia?
What does Philadelphia have anything to do with it? Don't worry about it.
It's a callback. This,
It's not, actually. Keep going.
So this next question goes to Joe, and this comes from Nathan Weinbender of the Spokesman Review and close personal friend of the show. Hi, Nathan. He says, Hell or High Water is one of the best movies so far about post-recession America. It's all about financial desperation, and it's a really vivid portrait of those rural Texas towns that have been gutted by the recession. So can you briefly speak on the allegory of America post-recession and its effects on the small rural towns, such as the ones displayed in this film? You have 1 minute.
I think it was used as a, I don't know, kind of a hollow set piece, essentially. They just needed these towns that were gutted and empty for this bank robbing movie to work. So I think it had less to do with a commentary on the recession than it did, let's give us a reason so these guys can rob 3 banks in a day and have it make sense on a visual medium. Let's go ahead and just use this to our advantage. So whereas they could have actually used this movie for social commentary on the effects of the horrendous crash, instead they just used it to their advantage, and frankly I find that very offensive.
Okay, Ethan, you have 30 seconds to respond.
I don't think that this movie is empty at all. I feel like this movie, its entire basis is not about them robbing banks. It's why are they robbing banks? And it comes down to, even the side characters in this movie, once they learn who these people are, they're on their side. You have the waitress who doesn't want to give up the tip and doesn't want to give up that she's met Chris Pine in the diner because she kind of understands what he's doing. You have the lawyer who doesn't want to give up his clients because, yeah, they're his clients, but also he thinks it's really great that he's using the bank's money to fucking steal the bank's money and use it to pay them back.
Okay, thank you. Joe, you have 15 seconds to respond.
So first you name the banker, or not even a banker, he's like their lawyer, so he has a confidentiality. He can't actually say anything if he doesn't want. And the waitress didn't even know they were robbing banks. She just thought Chris Pine was hot, and she just wanted to fuck him. So she just wanted a physical relationship with him. There was nothing to do with banking.
Okay, Joe, that's your 15. Thank you. Ethan, you have a final 15 seconds to respond.
You're ignoring an important part of that conversation when they're talking to the lawyer about how, this is why he can't tell anybody, but also this is why he's actually doing it and putting up with that risk. And the waitress knows that he is the robber after the fact and still does not give him up, does not pin him, and Jeff Bridges still does not know that he is a suspect, or still can't claim him as a suspect because of her.
Ethan, thank you. That's your 15. And we'll move on to the final question. Ethan, this is for you. This comes from Richard Brody of The New Yorker. He says, David Mackenzie gives each of his actors time to shine and fills the film with picturesque details, but the movie might as well have been a table read set before a green screen. So, do you want to comment on the effectiveness of the performances in the film at all? You have 1 minute.
Yeah, they were great. Who the fuck is this guy? Yeah, the people in this movie are very, very good at what they do. That's why it's their job. It's surprising, actually, how good the cast this is. I didn't expect it. I didn't know much about this movie going in, but Ben Foster doesn't get enough attention. Ben Foster killed it, but who also killed it? Chris Pine. I think I remember reading somewhere that he was too pretty in this movie, but sure, he delivers. I mean, and anybody who ever says Chris Pine can't be in a movie that's gritty because he's too pretty needs to go back and look at Smoking Aces. But yeah, these people pull this movie off extremely well. If anything, I'll say Jeff Bridges is just reprising his role from R.I.P.D., but it works in this context, so go for it, Jeff Bridges. Have fun. This movie kills it.
Okay, thank you. Joe, you have 30 seconds.
I mean, he didn't really give us anything that a table read wouldn't have. Ethan didn't describe what about these performances that made them so great. Really, he is correct in saying that. They could have just been sitting there reading everything off of cue cards and done just as good of a job because this movie's all just boring dialogue. Like I already said, they could have just sat in a car with green screens all around and just taken it line by line.
Okay, thank you, Ethan. You have 15 seconds to
Yeah,
respond.
about the great moment of tension at the very end when Chris Pine's sitting there with Jeff Bridges and they're kind of having a standoff. Not really, just not really saying it. Chris Pine has his hand on his gun and he's got the little lever pulled back, and then his family pulls up in a van and they start walking in, and you just see Chris Pine, same angle, just slowly release the lever because you know that they're going to be okay. They're not going to kill anybody in front of the family.
Okay, Ethan, I'm gonna have to stop you there. Joe, you have 15 to respond.
How hard is this? Should I win an Oscar now? Because that's all he did. He just stood there. Great acting.
Yeah, it was great. Good job, man. What are you doing this for?
That's all.
Okay, well, let's talk about how you guys actually felt. Joe, we'll start with you.
No, this movie is incredible. I was describing it to them earlier as like what Killing Them Softly did for like the crime genre. So they took this like genre-based movie and they've infused it with like social commentary, or like, because that was also about the crash, like 2008 crash. So they're using this like, again, this like genre to showcase something very human that's happening right now. So that's what Killing Them Softly did back in 2012 or whenever it came out.
That sounds right.
And this movie is doing the exact same thing, but just with the Western. So it's all about like the lengths people will go and how far like the collapse and like the bankers' greed has just like ruined people's lives essentially. But they do it in a very subdued way, set in this like modern day Western, which I did not realize. Walking into it, I didn't realize this was modern day. Like I thought this was like an old timey Western, but it was just like, oh shit, like no, they're talking about like Iraq and stuff. Like this movie's incredible. Like he said, all the acting's really great. Like every actor's on point. And again with Chris Pine, like watch Smoking Aces. That's the first thing I ever saw him in. I had no idea he was so handsome and charismatic. So great movie.
Okay, Ethan, how about you?
Also love it, absolutely love it. It was a fantastic movie. Like what you said, that this movie can take something very prevalent in our world right now and can actually just put that into sort of a genre backdrop and make it work, so that this is a familiar format that you're used to, but it tells a story that you might not have heard otherwise, and that is just the best way that a movie can be, really. Loved it. Yeah. Fucking go see it.
Yeah, they're simultaneously using the story and the genre to enhance one another. Mm-hmm. So it's essentially up and up and up and making it better and better.
Okay, well, how would you rate this movie?
I would give this movie a 10 out of 10. A Lot of Thunder. This movie's incredible.
Same. We don't like to give 10 out of 10s often, but
I don't.
This, yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
they've been few and far in between for us.
No, and I tried to I was going to say 9 out of 10, and I tried to justify that, but I couldn't actually justify it to myself. So.
Yeah.
Okay, well, where can we find you guys online?
We're at extremistmoviedebate@gmail.com. We're at Facebook, Extremist Movie Debate at Facebook, Extremist Movie at Twitter, and you can also like us below and write us a comment. Let us know if you have any questions that you want to ask about a movie that's coming out, new release, and we will use that as a topic, and we can actually debate that on the next video. And
you can post any questions or comments below. Our unpaid intern Jeff /moderator will read those, ask us the question, or you can tell us who you thought won this debate. This guy.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks and good night.